For decades, scientists have wondered why people with the same blood type share mysterious health patterns that others don't. Now, in 2026, DNA research has finally revealed the shocking truth hidden in your cells, a truth that explains why your stomach works completely differently than you ever imagined. This discovery has transformed how we understand the relationship between genetics and digestive health, opening entirely new avenues for personalized medicine and disease prevention. Your blood type isn't just a label on a medical chart or something you need to know before surgery. It's actually a genetic blueprint that reaches far deeper into your body than most people realize, controlling everything from how your immune system fights infection to how your digestive system processes food. And when it comes to stomach health, the differences between blood types are nothing short of remarkable. This isn't just about minor variations. This is about fundamental differences in how your body responds to disease and processes nutrition. Let's start with the basics. Your blood type is determined by something called antigens, which are tiny protein markers sitting on the surface of your red blood cells. Think of these antigens like flags waving from your cells, and they're what determine whether you're type A, type B, type AB, or type O. This system is controlled by genes, specifically the ABO gene, and the variations in this gene directly influence not just your blood compatibility, but your entire immune response system. When it comes to stomach function, this becomes profoundly important. People with type O blood are genetically different from everyone else because they lack both the A and B antigens altogether. This seems like a small detail, but it fundamentally changes how their bodies interact with the world around them, especially when it comes to bacteria living in the stomach. This is where the real story begins to unfold. The human stomach is home to a notorious bacteria called Helicobacter pylori, which has been causing stomach problems in humans for thousands of years. Today, scientists estimate that at least half of all humans carry this bacterium in their stomachs. For most people, it just sits there quietly, causing no problems. But for others, particularly those with certain blood types, this bacteria becomes a serious health threat that can lead to ulcers, chronic inflammation, and even stomach cancer. Interestingly, H. pylori has been found in human remains dating back centuries, suggesting this has been a human companion for a very long time. The question that has puzzled researchers for years is simple but profound. Why does this bacteria cause severe problems in some people but not in others? What makes some individuals susceptible while others remain unaffected? The answer lies in your blood type antigens, and specifically in how they interact with the surface of H. pylori bacteria. Here's how it works at the molecular level. The bacteria has evolved over millions of years to latch onto specific markers on your stomach lining cells. These markers are linked directly to your blood type. If you have type A blood, your stomach cells display different molecular patterns than if you have type B or type O. The bacteria has learned to recognize and exploit these patterns, essentially using your blood type antigens as a highway to stick to your stomach lining. Type A individuals have stomach cells that essentially roll out a welcome mat for H. pylori. The bacteria can bind more easily to their stomach lining, establishing a stronger foothold. This leads to higher rates of colonization, meaning more bacteria setting up shop in their stomach. Once established, this chronic infection triggers inflammation, which can progress over time to more serious conditions. Research shows that type A individuals have significantly higher rates of advanced precancerous gastric lesions. They also have dramatically higher rates of stomach cancer compared to people with other blood types. But here's where type O becomes fascinating. People with type O blood have a completely different stomach environment. Because they lack the A and B antigens, the bacteria cannot bind as effectively to their stomach lining cells. Without those convenient molecular landing pads, H. pylori struggles to establish itself firmly. The bacteria essentially has fewer attachment sites to grab onto. But here's the remarkable part. When type O individuals do get infected with H. pylori, their immune system actually responds more aggressively than other blood types. This is a crucial distinction that sets them apart immunologically. Research has shown that type O leukocytes, which are the white blood cells responsible for fighting infection, bind to H. pylori bacterial particles far more effectively than type A or type B leukocytes. This means that when type O individuals do encounter the bacteria, their immune system essentially grabs onto it with a more powerful grip and eliminates it more efficiently. It's like having a more effective and targeted defense system against this particular invader. This creates an interesting paradox in the research. Studies have shown that type O individuals actually have a higher rate of peptic ulcers compared to type A and AB people. This seems to contradict what we just said about protection and resistance. The reason is that when H. pylori does manage to establish itself in a type O stomach, the resulting immune response is so intense and inflammatory that it actually damages the stomach lining, creating ulcers. It's an overprotective immune system, so to speak. However, despite this higher ulcer rate, type O individuals have significantly lower rates of stomach cancer. This is because their immune system is so aggressive against the bacteria that it's less likely to allow the chronic, long-term inflammation that leads to cancer development. The protective effect of type O blood against stomach cancer has been confirmed repeatedly in research across different populations and different studies. A comprehensive meta-analysis combining data from thousands of patients consistently shows that type O individuals have a substantially reduced risk of gastric cancer compared to type A and type B. Some studies show that type A individuals have up to 2 to 3 times higher risk of developing stomach cancer than type O individuals. This difference is particularly pronounced in populations with high H. pylori infection rates. This is one of the most significant blood type health associations that science has discovered in recent decades. Now, beyond the H. pylori story, there's another layer to how type O blood affects stomach function. Your blood type influences more than just bacterial interactions. It affects your entire digestive system's inflammatory response and how it processes food at the cellular level. Type O individuals have been shown to have a particular sensitivity to certain dietary compounds called lectins, which are proteins found in many common foods like grains, legumes, and certain dairy products. These lectins are actually plant defense mechanisms that have evolved to protect plants from being eaten. These lectins can interact with your blood type antigens and trigger immune reactions in your digestive tract. Studies have found that over 70% of type O individuals experience digestive distress when consuming foods high in lectins. The lectins can bind to your intestinal cells in a way that's particularly problematic for type O individuals, triggering inflammation in the gut and increasing something called intestinal permeability, commonly known as leaky gut. When your intestinal barrier becomes more permeable, it allows bacterial toxins and undigested food particles to enter the bloodstream, triggering systemic inflammation throughout your body. This systemic inflammation can contribute to various health problems ranging from joint pain to autoimmune disorders. This is why many type O individuals find that avoiding or limiting certain foods dramatically improves their digestive health and overall well-being. The latest research from 2026 has taken this understanding even deeper into the realm of molecular biology. Scientists have conducted metabolomic studies which examine all the tiny molecules in your body related to metabolism, and they've discovered that ABO blood types are linked to specific metabolites that act as independent risk factors for various diseases. These aren't just indirect effects through immune response or bacterial colonization. The blood type antigens themselves are creating different metabolic environments in your body. For type O individuals, their unique metabolic profile creates an environment that's less conducive to tumor development, but more prone to inflammatory responses. These metabolites include amino acid derivatives, lipid metabolites, and various signaling molecules that circulate through your bloodstream. A June 2026 study specifically identified ABO-linked metabolites in the blood that appear to directly influence cancer risk independent of H. pylori infection. This means that even if someone with type A blood manages to avoid H. pylori infection entirely, they still have metabolic factors associated with their blood type that increase cancer risk. Conversely, type O individuals have metabolic profiles that naturally protect against these risks. This is groundbreaking because it shows that blood type influences health at an even more fundamental chemical level than previously understood. The genetic basis for all of this lies in a few key genetic variations in the ABO gene. Scientists have identified specific SNPs, or single nucleotide polymorphisms, that determine your blood type. These are labeled RS81767119, RS817746, and RS81776647. These tiny variations in your DNA create the antigens that end up on your cell surfaces throughout your body. When you have type O blood, you're essentially lacking the genetic instructions to create A and B antigens, which is why you have neither. This absence is what creates the entire cascade of different health effects. It's crucial to understand that these genetic variations don't just affect red blood cells in isolation. The ABO gene is expressed throughout your body in many tissue types, including your stomach lining, your intestines, and your immune cells. This widespread expression is called ubiquitous expression in scientific terminology. This is why blood type has such widespread effects on digestion and disease resistance. Every cell in your stomach is expressing your blood type, and this directly influences how those cells interact with bacteria, how they respond to inflammation, and how they process nutrients from food. The implications of this are profound. The protective effect of type O against stomach cancer has been observed across multiple different populations in different geographic regions. Studies in Japan, Korea, Europe, and the United States all show the same pattern. Type O individuals have lower stomach cancer rates regardless of their location. Japan is particularly notable because it has extremely high H. pylori infection rates and high gastric cancer rates overall, yet the blood type pattern still holds. This consistency across different genetic backgrounds and different dietary cultures strongly suggests that the effect is truly fundamental to blood type biology, and not just an artifact of diet or lifestyle differences in one particular population. However, it's important to emphasize that this protection is relative, not absolute. Type O is not a shield against stomach cancer. People with type O blood still need to maintain healthy lifestyles and get appropriate screening if they have concerning symptoms. The blood type effect accounts for relatively modest risk differences at the population level. If you have type A blood, you don't have a death sentence. If you have type O blood, you don't have a guarantee of perfect digestive health. But the statistical patterns are clear and consistent. What's particularly interesting is that the protective effect of type O extends beyond just stomach cancer. Type O individuals also show lower risks for certain other infections and diseases that involve bacterial colonization. They seem to have more aggressive immune responses to bacterial threats in general, though sometimes, as we saw with the ulcer story, this aggressiveness comes with a cost. It's a biological trade-off built into their genetics. The mechanism behind these differences has been studied extensively by researchers around the world. When H. pylori bacteria attempts to adhere to stomach cells, it uses specific adhesion molecules on its bone surface that recognize and bind to particular carbohydrate structures on host cells. These carbohydrate structures are directly related to your ABO blood type. The bacteria has evolved to recognize these structures because they're so common on human cells. Type A and B individuals have additional carbohydrate structures on their cells that H. pylori has learned to exploit effectively. Type O individuals have a simpler carbohydrate structure, lacking the extra complexity that makes binding easier for the bacteria. Furthermore, the immune response to infection is influenced by blood type through multiple different pathways. Different blood type antigens trigger different inflammatory responses in different cells and tissues. Type O individuals' immune cells are wired to respond more vigorously to H. pylori specifically, which explains their more aggressive clearing of infection, but also their higher ulcer rates. This wiring is encoded in how their immune cells recognize and respond to the bacterial antigens. Understanding your blood type gives you a framework for understanding your digestive health. If you're a type O, you now know that your stomach is naturally more resistant to chronic H. pylori colonization and the cancers that can follow from it. You also know that you're more likely to have sensitivity to lectins, and that your immune system tends to respond aggressively to perceived threats in your gut. This information can guide you toward dietary and lifestyle choices that work better for your particular biology. Avoiding lectin-rich foods, focusing on high-protein foods like grass-fed beef and wild-caught fish, incorporating fermented foods like sauerkraut and kimchi for gut. Health and being proactive about any stomach symptoms are all strategies that make particular sense for type O individuals. Working with a healthcare provider who understands blood type biology can be particularly beneficial. The research into blood type and health has come a long way since the discovery of the ABO blood group system over a century ago. For most of that time, blood types were seen as relevant only to transfusions and blood banking, an important but limited application. But in the past few decades, epidemiologists and molecular biologists have uncovered layer upon layer of connections between blood type and disease susceptibility. The stomach and H. pylori are just one example, though a particularly dramatic one. Blood type also influences susceptibility to blood clots, cardiovascular disease, and various infections. Some research even suggests blood type influences the progression of neurodegenerative diseases. The latest research from 2026 is particularly exciting because it's integrating multiple levels of analysis simultaneously. Scientists are now looking at how blood type affects not just immune response, but also metabolic pathways, inflammatory markers, and even the composition of your gut microbiome. Some research suggests that the bacteria living in your gut actually respond differently depending on your blood type. Your microbiome composition is influenced by your blood type antigens, which in turn influences your digestive function and overall health. This represents a fascinating interconnection between genetics, microbiology, and physiology. This represents a fundamental shift in how we think about personalized medicine and healthcare. For years, people have talked about precision medicine and tailoring treatments to individual genetics. Blood type is actually one of the most obvious and practical applications of this principle. Your blood type is something simple and easy to know. It's determined by just a few genetic variations, and yet it has profound effects on how your body works and what diseases you're likely to encounter. In many ways, understanding blood type is one of the most practical applications of genetics to everyday health. It bridges the gap between basic genetics and clinical medicine. The history of this research is fascinating. For decades, researchers noticed that blood type seemed correlated with various diseases, but they didn't understand why. Was it just coincidence? Was there a causal mechanism? The breakthrough came when scientists started looking at the molecular interactions between blood type antigens and specific pathogens. They realized that bacteria and other pathogens had actually evolved to exploit particular blood type antigens. This made evolutionary sense. If a particular blood type is common in a population, bacteria would evolve to better colonize individuals with that blood type. The H. pylori and stomach story is particularly important because stomach cancer remains a leading cause of cancer death worldwide, especially in certain regions like East Asia. If we can identify high-risk groups based on blood type and perhaps other factors, we can target screening and prevention efforts more effectively. Similarly, if we understand that type O individuals are more resistant to gastric cancer but more prone to ulcers, we can provide appropriate prevention strategies for each group. Type O individuals might not need the same level of gastric cancer screening as type A individuals, but they might benefit more from H. pylori treatment if infection is detected. The practical implications of this research are substantial and meaningful. For individuals with type O blood, knowing that you have natural protection against gastric cancer is reassuring, but it doesn't mean you can ignore stomach symptoms or be cavalier about your digestive health. If anything, the higher ulcer risk means you should be even more attentive to any signs of stomach discomfort. Similarly, if you have type A blood, you now have scientific evidence for why you might want to be more proactive about screening and prevention strategies. The research also highlights the importance of treating H. pylori infection when it's detected, regardless of blood type. While type O individuals may be more resistant to chronic colonization, they're not immune to infection. And while type A individuals are more susceptible, they're not destined to get cancer if they're infected. The presence of the infection is what matters most. If you test positive for H. pylori, treatment is generally recommended, as it can prevent ulcers and reduce cancer risk significantly. Looking forward, researchers are working to understand even more about how blood type influences digestive health and overall well-being. Some studies are exploring whether blood type influences the response to particular medications or treatments used to manage digestive issues. Others are looking at whether blood type might influence the development of other gastrointestinal conditions like inflammatory bowel disease or irritable bowel syndrome. The field is rapidly evolving, with new discoveries emerging regularly. One fascinating area of ongoing research involves the possibility of using blood type information to predict who's at highest risk for complications from various infections. During the COVID-19 pandemic, some studies suggested that blood type influenced disease severity. Type O individuals appeared to have better outcomes on average. Suggests that the same mechanisms that give type O protection against gastric cancer might also confer protection against certain respiratory infections. Your blood type is essentially a summary of your immune system's strengths and weaknesses against different threats. The gut microbiome. Research is particularly cutting edge in 2026. Scientists have discovered that your blood type antigens actually act as nutrients and recognition signals for the bacteria living in your gut. Different blood types select for different microbiome compositions. Type O. Individuals tend to have different ratios of various bacterial species compared to type A individuals. These microbiome differences then influence digestion, immune function, and potentially disease risk. It's a multi-layered system where blood type influences which bacteria thrive, and those bacteria then influence health outcomes. There's also emerging research on whether certain dietary approaches work better for different blood types. While the popular blood type diet has limited scientific support for many of its claims, targeted dietary modifications based on blood type specifics do show promise. For type O individuals specifically, reducing lectin intake has shown measurable benefits in multiple studies. People who follow a lectin avoidance diet experience less gut inflammation, better digestion, and improved absorption of nutrients. This makes biological sense given what we know about lectin. Interactions with type O antigens. It's worth noting that environmental and behavioral factors still dominate health outcomes overall. Your blood type influences your baseline risk, but your diet, stress levels, exercise habits, smoking status, and whether you seek preventive care all matter tremendously. Someone with type A blood who maintains excellent lifestyle habits and gets regular screening has better outcomes than someone with type O blood who ignores symptoms and lives unhealthily. Blood type isn't destiny, it's just one factor in a complex equation. The research into blood type and H. pylori has also had practical applications in other areas of medicine beyond gastroenterology. Some researchers have explored whether blood type influences the efficacy of particular H. pylori treatments. It turns out that treatment success rates do vary somewhat by blood type, though the effect is typically small. This is one reason why researchers are working to better understand these mechanisms, as they might eventually lead to more personalized treatment approaches. One of the most remarkable aspects of this research is how much scientists still don't fully understand despite decades of study. The ABO gene affects more than just red blood cells. It's expressed in many tissue types throughout your body. But the full range of effects and mechanisms isn't completely clear. Why does it affect immune response in exactly this way? How do the metabolic changes associated with blood type arise? What other systems in the body are influenced by blood type in ways we haven't discovered yet? These are active questions at the frontier of medical research today. Type O blood also influences how your stomach produces acid and digestive enzymes. The cells lining your stomach that produce these substances express your blood type antigens. This means that the chemical environment of your stomach is subtly different depending on your blood type. Type O stomachs may have slightly different pH levels or enzyme concentrations compared to other blood types. These differences are small but significant enough to influence bacterial colonization rates and overall digestive efficiency. The parietal cells that produce stomach acid and the chief cells that produce pepsin all express your blood type antigens. Another important aspect of type O blood function involves the mucus layer protecting your stomach lining. This protective layer is made partly of glycoproteins that include your blood type antigens. The structure and composition of this mucus differ based on blood type. For type O individuals, the lack of A and B antigens means a different mucus composition, which affects how resistant the stomach is to bacterial penetration. This is another mechanism by which blood type influences stomach function. The mucus layer thickness and consistency are influenced, but doesn't by blood type, which directly affects bacterial adherence patterns. This creates a complex biological system where multiple factors combine to determine susceptibility. The story of type O blood and stomach function is ultimately a story about how our genetics creates our individuality and influences our health. Your blood type is determined by tiny variations in your DNA, yet these variations cascade through your entire body, influencing everything from how your immune system responds to bacteria to how your stomach processes food. Understanding these connections helps us understand ourselves better and make more informed choices about our health. For anyone with type O blood, the takeaway is clear and empowering. You have an inherent protection against gastric cancer that many other people don't have. This is a genuine biological advantage built into your genetic code. However, you also have a higher tendency toward ulcers when infected with H. pylori, and you have metabolic and dietary factors that require attention and awareness. By understanding your blood type biology in depth, you can make dietary choices, lifestyle modifications, and healthcare decisions that align with your particular genetic makeup. You can be proactive about screening when appropriate, avoid unnecessary screening when your risk is lower, and focus on the preventive strategies that matter most for your specific health profile. The same applies to individuals with other blood types. Type A individuals should be aware of their higher gastric cancer risk and perhaps be more proactive about screening and H. pylori testing. Type B and AB individuals have their own patterns and risk profiles. The point isn't that one blood type is better or worse than another. Each blood type comes with its own advantages and disadvantages. The key is understanding what your particular blood type means for your health so you can take appropriate action. The year 2026 marks an important inflection point in this research. Scientists are now applying advanced molecular techniques, metabolomic analysis, and large-scale population studies to understand blood type biology with unprecedented detail and precision. The old mysteries are being solved one by one, the mechanisms are being revealed, and as our understanding deepens, so does our ability to apply this knowledge in practical ways to prevent disease and optimize health. Your blood type is written in your genes, expressed on every cell in your body, and influencing your health in ways both obvious and subtle. It determines who you are at a molecular level. And when it comes to your stomach, it literally determines how your digestive system functions, how it responds to infection, and what diseases it's predisposed to encounter. Understanding this isn't just scientifically fascinating. It's personally relevant information that can help you live a healthier, longer life, aligned with your unique biology. That's the real power of knowing what your blood type means for your stomach and your health.